Hi everyone, my name is Nusha Mimi. Today, my groupmates and I will be presenting a case paper V. Dixon that was charged at Appellate Court of Illinois, 1st District. It is an appellate case which happened in 13 October 1991. It is a murder case of Tiffany Lindsay, a 16-year-old girl who was found dead in her apartment in Chicago. She was brutally stabbed and beaten by the accused, Stephen Dixon, who was also 16 years old at that time. Although the case happened in 1991, he was convicted in 2015 due to the lack of forensic science knowledge. The case reopened in 2009 when blood pattern analysis alongside DNA analysis linked Dixon as a prime suspect. During the investigation, there were many bloodstain patterns found on the shoes and clothing of Dixon, which indicate bloodshot event. At the end, Dixon was charged for 40 years imprisonment. In this case, there are several problems that occur during the forensic investigation, which involve blood pattern analysis. Firstly, the delay in investigation led to a cold case. Although the incident happened in 1991, there were no charges convicted due to the lack of technological advancement. It is concerning as the evidence may undergo degradation resulting in evidence loss. Next, the limitation of scientific knowledge exposure in blood pattern analysis. The expert did not include mathematics and physics precision, let alone trajectory analysis, which require measurement of angle. This weakened the conclusiveness as they rarely depend on visual assessment only. Other than that, the prosecution relied on blood pattern analysis heavily, although having an unclear crime scene. Blood pattern is important evidence, but it can be strengthened with DNA analysis and witness support. As there were no blood pattern analysis standard, the term used lacked clarity, such as most likely, which make the investigation not accurate and precise.
My name is Aisha, and today I'll be presenting two key aspects of our case study, which are the context in which BPA was used and also the classification of blood patterns found in the case. Firstly, let's look at the context of usage. In this case, BPA was used to determine Stephen's position and orientation during the assault. For example, whether he was standing, crouching, or kneeling. The second one is to reconstruct the sequence of events based on the direction and location of the blood stains. The third one is to support the theory that Dixon was within 2 to 3 feet of blood source, especially based on the patterns found on the right shoe and jeans. The last one is to help differentiate between incidental contact and impact spatter, which in this case, investigators concluded that it was impact related. Now, moving on to the classification of blood patterns. Number one is impact spatter, which over 100 stains were found on the toe and upper part of the Dixon's right shoe. The size and shape of these stains were consistent with blunt force trauma. The direction of the stain tails showed that the blood source was directly in front of the shoe. Although it is not confirmed, the presence of blood on Dixon's clothing could suggest contact-based transfer from another surface or object. The impact and directional patterns strongly supported the theory that Dixon was facing the victim and within the close range when the blood was projected. Thank you. I'll now pass it on to the next presenter.
Hi, my name is Fatiha, and I'll be presenting my part, which are the bloodstain pattern analysis and also scene reconstruction from the case of People vs. Dixon in 2022. Let's start with bloodstain pattern analysis. This was conducted by investigator named Thomas Murchie, who had 24 years of experience and received specialized BPA training. In this case, he was qualified in court as bloodstain pattern expert. So instead of using complicated mathematical calculation, he relied on visual analysis of the size and shape and also distribution of the blood stains. He mainly examined defendant's clothing, like the pants and the shoe. So starting with the right shoe, there were over 100 blood stains, mostly concentrated at the top and the toe areas. There were no stains at the back of the shoe, which suggested that the blood came from the front direction. In contrast, the left shoe only had about 20 to 30 blood stains, showing clear difference in exposure. This suggested that the right side of the body was facing the blood source during the attack. The pants showed a similar pattern, which most of the stains were on the right leg and below the knee, and they matched the size and the shape of the stains on the shoe. All the stains were classified as impact spatter, which usually comes from blunt force trauma. Based on this, the expert concluded that the defendant's right side was likely 2 to 3 feet away of the victim during the attack. Alright, let's move on to the scene reconstruction. The victim suffered severe head injuries and also stab wound to the neck. The knife had pierced the victim's artery, leading to high velocity blood release. Based on the blood pattern and direction, the main source of the blood was likely near to the floor, and the attacker was positioned very close to the victim when it happened. The pattern showed that the defendant was most likely stationary, either standing or crouching, rather than moving around. There were no signs of chaotic struggle in the bloodstain pattern, which directly contradicted the defendant's claim of random attack in the dark. Finally, the DNA evidence found on defendant's clothing and under the victim's fingernail supported the BPA finding, which confirms close physical contact. So in summary, the blood patterns and positioning prove that the accused was present, close, and facing the victim during the fatal injuries, which helped build the prosecution's case.
Hi, my name is Nur Najwa and today I'll be presenting the evaluations and the recommendations.
Evaluation of evidence. The bloodstain pattern analysis in this case supported the theory that Mr. Dixon was present and in close proximity to the victim at the time the fatal injuries were inflicted. Notably, the right pant leg had more stain than the left, particularly below the knee, indicating that the suspect may have been kneeling or crouching during the incident. The expert, Investigator Merchi, concluded that the pants and shoes were in the same position when the blood was projected, that the suspect was facing source of the blood, and that the shoes were likely on the ground within 2 to 3 feet to the source. However, several concerns were raised during cross-examination. The defense noted that the key observations made during testimony were not documented in the expert's written report. The analysis relied heavily on the visual interpretation without mathematical trajectory reconstruction. Terms such as good chance and most likely were used, language the defense argued weakened the scientific reliability and the testimony. Despite these criticisms, the court ultimately accepted the evidence, finding that the methodology employed was consistent with the standard practices in the field. Recommendations. This case highlights important areas for improvement in the application of bloodstain pattern analysis. First, improve documentation. Expert reports must comprehensively reflect all the observations and conclusions presented during testimony. Any inconsistencies can undermine credibility and create openings for challenge. Second, use quantitative analysis. Whenever possible, or visual interpretations should be supplemented with quantitative measurements such as angles, distance, and trajectories. This adds objectivity and reduces the potential for bias or misinterpretations. Third, cross-verify with other evidence. Bloodstain pattern analysis should not be considered in their isolation. In this case, the presence of the suspect's DNA on the victim's fingernails strongly corroborated close contact, such as corroboration strengthened the overall evidentiary value. Fourth, training and standardization. Finally, practitioners should adhere to standardized protocols and maintain current training. Relying solely on the experience based on the judgment can lead to the inconsistency and challenges in court.
In conclusion, this case highlights the importance of blood pattern analysis to ensure fair verdict in civil justice. We can learn that despite its subjectivity, the lack of blood pattern analysis method can interrupt the case while presenting it in court. It made a huge difference between a conviction or acquittal of a suspect. Hence, this forensic analysis should be further expanded as it determines someone's fate. Last but not least, for BPA to be reliable, it must be supported by proper documentation, precise measurement alongside other forensic evidence.